Hi, my name's Tim Collins, and welcome to the Adventure Mind podcast, where we explore the intersection of outdoor adventure and mental health. Today, we're going to talk about how adventure can help rebuild after burnout. Burnout is something I definitely have some experience with. In particular, about 5 years ago, I was coming off of a trip, a 10-month motorcycle trip to all the national parks. I was posting YouTube videos twice a week, working nonstop, just constantly go, go, go for 10 months straight. And it totally burnt me out. And it was terrible. I felt exhausted. I felt numb. I had a lack of motivation that I just was not used to and did not sit right with me. I didn't feel good about that. It was terrible. And, it was such a shame because it was coming off of such a high, such a amazing experience, traveling to all the national parks on a motorcycle. Like, who wouldn't want to do that? Like, that was such an incredible experience, but I just was overdoing it with posting twice a week, which was taking up so much time. Like, I had no downtime. Any downtime I had when I wasn't on the motorcycle, I was working, I was making videos. And at the end of that, I finally slowed down and things kind of caught up with me. It destroyed me. Like, I was so burnt out. I lost interest in motorcycles. It wasn't a good situation. And, I wasn't really sure where to go from there, because the thing that always helped me cope with burnout or depression or, feeling numb was riding motorcycles. That was the thing that cured me. And now I was burnt out because of that. So, I mean, it's definitely possible, to get burnt out by things that we actually really enjoy doing. It's 100% possible. I'm somebody that just does things to the extreme. There's no halfway with me. I'm either all or nothing. And that's the way I was with motorcycles, 600 miles a day for weeks on end, 700 miles a day. I mean, that's, 10, 11 hours in the saddle, driving around the United States in the wind and the rain and the snow and everything. And then also getting to camp at night, getting on my laptop and putting another 4 or 5 hours into editing videos and getting them ready for posting twice a week. I don't regret it, even though it did burn me out and I kind of had a pretty hard crash from that. I definitely don't regret it. It was an amazing experience. I just think in the future, I need to pace myself a little differently and kind of be aware of the fact that, like, I have a tendency to go overboard with things, and I need to be careful about that when I'm doing things that I love doing. This is part of the reason I may never do the Pacific Crest Trail. Like, it's too big, it's too much, and I'll push myself too hard. Maybe someday I'll be able to find balance and accomplish a goal like the Pacific Crest Trail or the Appalachian Trail or something really super big and like months and months on end. But for now, I'm doing, shorter 2, 3, 4 day weekends, backpacking kind of thing. I did just do 14 days in the Himalayas on the Everest Base Camp trek. That was probably the biggest I would say that I should be doing without burning myself out on it. So I also kind of want to talk a little bit about why burnout disconnects us from ourselves. It just kind of dulls curiosity, creativity, and our identity. This is definitely something I can relate to. And I think that a lot of people who have dealt with burnout can relate to these feelings of, I was such a curious person and creative with the YouTube channel. I was curious about my environment and the world around me, and I was learning things about the national parks that I was visiting, and I was being creative. I was making videos on YouTube, which I absolutely love to do. And I kind of lost my sense of identity too. I lost the things that I thought defined who I was as a person, which would be motorcycling. So I lost all of these things. Like, creativity went away. When I got burnt out, I just wasn't really motivated to make videos, and I lost that creative outlet for a while. I did obviously get back to it, and now I'm back to starting a podcast, which I'm really excited about as a creative outlet for me. And I love talking about these things, mental health and adventure, and how they relate. So I'm really enjoying this new creative outlet that I found post burnout. But it's a real shame to lose your creativity, your lust for life. Like, it just goes away. And, it also seems that just sleeping a lot isn't quite enough to fix that burnout. This is why it's important to let adventure create the space to reset. Basically, by stepping into a new environment, especially the outdoors, it creates a mental and emotional distance from the stressors that caused the burnout to begin with. Again, this was a burnout that was caused by being out in nature and doing something really incredible and adventurous. But I think just getting out in nature and moving at a slower pace was huge for me. It wasn't about being out in nature and like just burning my energy to the ground, and doing everything I possibly could with every spare moment and living like I had a month to live. It's about getting out there, letting nature kind of help you reset and kind of recuperate and find that like, being in nature and being on adventure, it helps with burnout. And this is why it's so important. If you're feeling burnt out from work or stress or family life or whatever it happens to be, it happens. People end up burnt out from different things. I have found that getting back out into nature at a slower pace, this is why I'm enjoying being on foot and hiking and backpacking now as opposed to the motorcycle thing, which, I know a lot of you listening are motorcyclists because you came over from my old YouTube channel, and I appreciate that. I think you can definitely get the same effects from being on a motorcycle. I think for me right now, I need to stay away from it because I got burnt out on it and I'm just kind of over it for now. But I can totally relate to anybody that gets this kind of reparative nature from riding motorcycles, that it heals and it helps. And it really just puts you so immersed in your environment. It's not like being in a car or, being in the elements, either on a motorcycle or on foot. You get the smells, you get the changes in temperature, the subtle differences in, air, temperature or whatever. You're so immersed in it, and it's so easy to connect to nature on those two modes of transportation. I think that's just such a great way to come back from burnout, is to get in nature, connect with nature, and slow down and kind of disconnect from the things that are stressing you out and causing burnout to begin with. So for me, this was, getting out and hiking, small hikes at first, and then bigger hikes and bigger hikes, pushing myself, challenging myself, jumping into an environment that's outside of the norm, being outdoors, being in nature, out in the wilderness, far from civilization, completely disconnected from the things that were burning me out. And I also had to, make some changes to my life. Like I had to stop posting twice a week. Actually, I just took a break from posting for a while, like a year. I just stopped posting because I just couldn't do it anymore. And I had to take care of myself for a while and get back to being myself again. And it was hard for me to walk away from posting videos for that long. As somebody who had been doing it for years at that point, twice a week, I was just so used to posting and being creative and doing that, but I had to walk away from it, and at least for a while until I got better, and I started taking little hikes to Fossil Creek, which is a waterfall. That was an incredible day hike. Really, really beautiful. It was nice to just get out into nature without a major agenda of like, doing something crazy big. It was, about 8 miles total round trip. A beautiful spot in Arizona. The water is just like crystal clear and you can swim and, it's just beautiful, and doing things like that. And then slowly working up to things like, say, doing the Grand Canyon, 24 miles, 2 days, one night, hiking across the Grand Canyon from the North Rim to the South Rim. Again, getting out in nature, getting immersed in your environment, getting pulled into the adventure where it is just like, that is your existence and that is everything. The Grand Canyon was an incredible experience for me. And like when you're out there, it is so easy to stay in the moment and not get distracted by things that are bothering you or stressing you out. It's such an excellent escape, but not just an escape, it's a tool to kind of cope with burnout, which is kind of the point of what I'm trying to get at. Next, let's talk a little bit about the power of physical movement. This is part of why I've found, for me, for right now, hiking is the way to go for me, because I need to be moving my body and being physically active. About to turn 40, and I don't want to, lose my youth by not using my body. I want to stay in shape. I want to stay fit. I want to be active and able to do the things that I want to do. Use it or lose it. Like I don't want to lose it, so I'm gonna move my body, and that's why for me right now, hiking has been an excellent, excellent outlet and source of exercise. So basically, moving your body in a purposeful way, i.e. hiking, exploring, climbing, it helps release built up tension and re-energize the mind. I think, I can definitely relate to this. Hiking in particular, it helps release tension for me, and it definitely re-energizes my mind. Being done with a hike and being like physically exhausted because you really exerted yourself. I don't know about you, but for me personally, my brain feels so great after something like that, like so refreshed and rejuvenated. and like ready to rock and roll. My body is exhausted and I'm ready to lay down and take a nap. But my brain is like, hell yeah, like let's do this. Like it's just I don't know why, but hiking and moving and doing physical things and accomplishing difficult tasks really re-energizes my brain in a wonderful way. And I really think that's a great tool in our toolkit is doing difficult things and getting the benefit of, feeling alive and feeling re-energized, revitalized, and that kind of thing. So next, let's talk about adventure and how it restores a sense of purpose. Burnout often comes from feeling stuck or overwhelmed. For me, it was mostly overwhelmed, but also, feeling stuck like in a routine and maybe even a rut of posting every week and working, and like, you know, go, go, go. If I'm not on the motorcycle, I'm working. That was me. Like I felt extremely stuck in that situation. And also like my income depended on that. So I was feeling almost obligated to keep doing it, even though maybe sometimes I didn't really want to. And that wasn't really what I started the YouTube channel for. I did it because I wanted to do it. I didn't want it to feel like work. Um, but it was starting to feel like work. I was starting to feel like I was stuck because I had to make money and I had to live and survive. And that was how I made money um, for a couple of years at least. Overwhelmed? Absolutely. 100% I was overwhelmed with the workload, even just sensory overload, just like too much of a good thing. It was really an intense experience, 10 months on the motorcycle. Total sensory overload. Every day was like the best day of my entire life. Every single day, was overshadowed by the next day. It just kept getting better and better. It's such an incredible way to travel, but it's incredibly overwhelming. Like you're dealing with all your senses are just completely overloaded most of the time on a trip like that. But we can use adventure to kind of introduce simple goals. Things like reaching the summit, finishing the trail, things that rebuild confidence and momentum. And this was how I used hiking. Like I was just explaining a minute ago, I would start out slow, a day hike, maybe 8 miles, work up to, a 2 day hike, get across the Grand Canyon and then, work up to longer and bigger and just keep creating goals and accomplishing them. And like the momentum of that, in adventure translates into regular life. And I was able to kind of build momentum and start getting better and start doing more. And I started working at a different job to make money because I wasn't doing the YouTube thing that much anymore. And slowly that just kind of built up and built up. I ended up leaving that job because I was starting to get burnt out on that, to be honest with you. Took a step away from that particular job because I felt like I was heading towards burnout again. And I really didn't want to go down that road again. Now I'm working a new job that has been really great for me. It feels really healthy, like it's a good work environment, and I'm being physical outdoors, working with my body, but I'm working a lot, like 6, 7 days a week. And I need to be careful about that because I could definitely slip back into burnout very easily. Like I'm very prone to that and susceptible to burnout. So I need to be aware of that and be cautious of that. But what I was getting at is, it just creates momentum from burnout to a healthy, highly functioning human being, So you can't expect to get better overnight, especially something that took months to damage. You can't expect it to get better overnight. Like it's going to take months to rebuild and it's going to take some effort, starting small, creating goals, accomplishing those goals and working your way up to bigger and bigger things is a great way to escape burnout and recover from that. As I said before, adventure restores your sense of purpose. And this comes from creating goals and accomplishing them. And, for me, I did feel like I kind of lost my sense of purpose in burnout because everything that like I thought was my identity went away. The motorcycle thing went away. The YouTube thing went away. These were the things I loved doing. And this was like who I was as a person, and I lost that. But by, going out on adventures on a smaller scale and working up to bigger ones was how I recreated that sense of purpose and how I was able to recover from that aspect of burnout. Next thing, let's talk about being present without trying. And basically, adventure forces you into the present moment without meditation apps or techniques. This has helped quiet my mental noise incredibly well. I think it's so, so important to get in the moment, especially when recovering from burnout. And adventure is an excellent way to do that. As I said before, motorcycling is an excellent way to get in the moment. Because it is a dangerous task and things are happening fast. You have to constantly be focused on what you're doing and paying attention, and it becomes like almost a meditative state. I got a very similar effect when I was hiking to Everest Base Camp, and it was so challenging, and you're just so focused on putting one foot in front of the other, and everything feels super heavy because of the altitude. You can't breathe. Everything is harder, but basically, you're just one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other. And, kind of even just staring at the ground, and just, it becomes like this meditative state. And then every once in a while you look up and you see where you are, you see the mountains around you. And it's just like awakening. Like it's just, uh, it, I don't know, to go from that meditative state to that sense of awe, was such an incredible way to feel in the moment, to feel alive. And it wasn't something I was doing on purpose. Like, I was just moving my feet, and that put me in a meditative state that some people spend years trying to get to that with meditation or whatever. And I found that, like, adventure in particular, like, you can get that like so much easier, whether it be motorcycling or kayaking down a river or hiking or backpacking or whatever it happens to be. Getting in the moment is so important, and it's so easy to do with adventure. And it definitely helps pull you out of burnout. Next, let's talk a little bit about rebuilding trust in yourself. Basically, completing hard things outdoors helps rebuild self-trust after burnout erodes confidence. I can definitely relate to this. My confidence was shot after I was burnt out. After I stopped doing the YouTube thing and the motorcycle thing, I really just lost all my confidence. But doing things like hiking across the Grand Canyon builds immense confidence in yourself. Not just because you accomplished something cool and you have that to feel good about, like, that's definitely part of it, but just the things that happen along the way, the ability to, like, have self-reliance, to do difficult things, not just to get a sense of accomplishment, but the fact that you're using tools to actually get through this difficult thing, it builds confidence. Like, for example, navigational skills, like, maybe that's something that you're learning, but you realize that you're capable of doing that. You realize that you're capable of, planning out your food for the trip, for the 2-3 days, whatever it happens to be. Your ability to find water and filter it. So many different things along the way on an adventure that build skills, that build confidence. I think it's getting out on an adventure, pushing yourself, doing difficult things. You will rebuild trust in yourself. You will build your confidence back up. I've definitely surprised myself on adventures. Everest Base Camp, I don't mean to keep bringing it up, but getting to base camp, really, I didn't think I was going to make it. And I was pretty shocked and surprised that I did. And there was definitely a sense of confidence that came with that. But let's talk next about something that's very important to know. And that is that adventure doesn't have to be extreme. The healing adventures can be small and accessible, like local hikes, solo walks, weekends away. This is something anybody can do. This doesn't have to be, you don't have to go to Everest Base Camp to recover from burnout. You can go to the local park, sit and watch the ducks in the water at the local park, go sit by the ocean, take a walk, on a local trail, a couple miles or whatever. Little things still have big impact on mental health and burnout recovery. It does not have to be a trip to Everest Base Camp. Even just a day spent on a kayak, rolling down a river, down the Salt River in Arizona. Incredible way to get in touch with nature, have an adventure. It's doable in a day, and you can get so much mental health benefit from that. It doesn't have to be big. It really doesn't. Most of my adventures are smaller. I don't post them as much because they're not as epic and everything. And that's kind of, I reserve social media for like the big epic hikes that I want to share with people. But I do a lot of smaller, hikes and spending time outdoors in nature and walking and just reconnecting with nature. It doesn't have to be big. So let's talk a little bit about some lessons that you can carry back into everyday life. Basically, by going on adventures and doing difficult things, you're going to learn patience, you're going to learn resilience, and you're going to learn simplicity through adventure, which translates back into work, relationships, and daily stress. This kind of goes back to what I was just talking about, like all these little skills along the way that you learn and that you prove to yourself that you can do certain things. Patience is a big one out in nature. you're at the mercy of Mother Nature. Like storms happen, terrain gets rough, the hike is maybe steeper than you thought it was going to be. Maybe it's dusty and you can't breathe. There's so many things that are going to teach you patience in nature and out in the wilderness. So that's a huge one. And patience is such an important skill to have, and resilience. Resilience is another one. I talk about this a lot. Doing tough things builds mental resilience and mental toughness. And that mental toughness will help you cope and deal with mental health issues such as burnout. And simplicity. This is something I learned a long time ago on the motorcycle. Living out of saddlebags for months on end, you really have to keep things simple and you have to keep things streamlined. And honestly, once you get to that point and you get used to the simplicity and the minimalism of it, it's addicting, and you'll spend the rest of your life making things more simple for yourself and more streamlined. After my motorcycle trips, I would come home and I would just get rid of so much stuff that I didn't need, that I wasn't carrying, because I learned everything I needed can fit on my back or in my saddlebags. And that simplicity is priceless. Like, it is so much nicer to not be bogged down by material things and clutter, whether that clutter be physical or mental or emotional. You just learn that simplicity is a better way to go. And it's a great skill to learn. And you can take that back into work and your relationships and your daily stress. So let's talk a little bit about how to start using adventure as a recovery tool. Let's give you some actionable steps. I would like to say that you should start small. You should be consistent. You should listen to your body, and don't treat adventure as another thing to optimize. Just get out there on a smaller scale and work up to bigger things. If you're feeling burnt out right now, or if you happen to be facing that in the future, starting small, getting out in nature, but being consistent about it and going out, set a goal for yourself. Maybe once a week on a weeknight, you're going to go to the park after work and take a little stroll. And maybe every other weekend, you're going to take a day hike that's like 8 miles, and then build up to maybe a 2-day, 1-night hike, backpacking trip. But be consistent. Set a goal that you can stick to, and then stick to it, and listen to your body. Don't push yourself. If you're recovering from burnout, you want to push yourself in a healthy way and do difficult things, but you don't want to burn yourself out even more by, not getting enough sleep. Let me give you, some idea on what I'm trying to say here is, you can do difficult things and hike, 24 miles across the Grand Canyon, but make sure that you get a good night's sleep and a good meal, and take care of yourself when you're not hiking. So you did something difficult and challenging, but you did it correctly, and you made sure not to contribute to your burnout. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Do difficult things, but take care of yourself along the way, is what I'm kind of saying. So that's kind of it. One last little thing is adventure didn't fix everything for me, but it gave me the space to remember who I was before burnout and the strength to rebuild from there. And, it's just an incredible thing. And burnout really sucks. It's a terrible thing, but it happens. And we can definitely use adventure and nature to cope with that, to recover from that, to come back stronger than we were before it. So hopefully you kind of resonated with some of this episode. Thank you so much for listening and sticking with me and hanging out. And please leave a review wherever you're listening to this podcast. It helps people find the podcast, and it helps the podcast grow and continue to create these episodes. So if you're on YouTube looking at my face, please leave a comment. Don't forget to subscribe, and let me know what you guys think about this episode, and I will read all the comments and get back to you on that. I will respond to any comments that I get. Anyways, thank you so much for being here, and I will talk to you in the next episode. Bye.